Aloha. Thank you for joining us for another episode of today's topic. My name is Tom Tanimoto. I'm an attorney licensed to practice law here in the state of Hawaii. And as always, I would like to thank the producer of the show and my good friend as well as colleague in the law, attorney Bobby Bautista, for the opportunity to be a part of this program. And for all the viewers out there, we've had a bit of a hiatus with the holidays. We're back. We're looking to put together a bunch of new shows with a different array of topics. Of course, once in a while we'll cover legal topics, but I think you'll enjoy today's topic. What we have today is Mr. Chuck Boller. He's the Executive Director of the Hawaii International Film Festival. And Mr. Boller,
thanks,
Chuck.
Tom. Chuck.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
And I guess to begin, could you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself?
Actually, it's funny, we're surrounded by lawyers because, thanks to Bobby also and to you, I appreciate it very much. So we have three lawyers here. I'm an entertainment lawyer and spent most of my career on the East Coast. You know, Boston, I went to law school, New York. Philadelphia, had a phone and talk show, so I already admire what you're doing. National Geographic Television was a big client of mine. They came to Hawaii on a film shoot and brought me. The plane door opened. I thought I'm in paradise. I love the culture. I love everything about it. I'm a swimmer for exercise. I found my home at last. So I've been coming back and forth for about 20 years. Met the wonderful lady, Jeanette Paulson, who founded and ran the Hawaii International Film Festival for 15 years, and she offered me a temporary position. I took it. I kept growing over the years, big and fun. I thought, I'm leaving Washington, I'm moving full-time to Hawaii. Best thing I ever did. And I've been, this is my 11th year as Executive Director of the Hawaii International Film Festival.
So you initially started off as a lawyer in the entertainment field.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I guess that would involve issues such as copyrights and royalties, things like that?
Yes. In fact, I had my own law office in Georgetown, a great little brownstone there. It was a great time in my life, as now is too. But interesting, I was also a part-time lobbyist with Jack Valenti as a Motion Picture Association, the legendary Jack Valenti. Very tough man, always very fair to me. But we started together something called the American Copyright Council that was a lobbying organization for intellectual property. And just one quick aside, Jack, who is since passed on, but his great nightmare was going to be when you could make your own DVDs, because they would be as good as the original. Well, that happened, and that's going all over the place. And you see the effect on piracy and such. But so in those days, especially, we were trying to fight some of the new technology and realize you can't fight it. You have to learn how to work with it. So it's gone on from that.
Well, interesting you mentioned technology. You and I had spoken off camera, and we're going to get further into technology, how it's also a plus, as far as the topic that we're going to discuss today. So I guess, we're talking about the Hawaii International Film Festival. What is that?
Hawaii International Film Festival. By the way, people say to me, I just came back from Los Angeles, and people say to me, how do you train to be a film festival director? Well, I don't know anybody who's trained for it. It sort of fell into my lap, I'm proud to say, and excited by that. But actually, entertainment law is perfect because you're dealing with contracts, which you deal with. You're dealing with the film business. I would have clients in Washington who would do a film, go, now what do I do with it? I said, have a press conference. How do I do that? Like, well, I'll do the press conference. Hawaii International Film has press conferences all the time. Or now you have to have the reception. Like, how do I do that? So I'd plan the party. It's not rocket science, but those are things that happen at the film festival. The Hawaii International Film Festival was started 30 years ago by the East-West Center.
Oh, interesting.
Which in the East-West Center's mandate is to increase cultural understanding between the East and the West. In this case, through film. They started us as a way to add to what they already do. There's no better window into another culture than film. There really isn't. I mean, you're watching a Bollywood movie for 3 hours, you're in India, surrounded by the culture. There's no better way to do it. East-West Center's fabulous organization. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary. We just celebrated our 30th, but we became bigger than they could probably handle, honestly. And so we shook hands, left as dear friends. We still work with them, and we've been independent now for 20 years. So we have three main events every year. We have an Oscar big fundraising party every year with the Oscars. They're one of only 50 official events sanctioned by the Oscars. So when people come to our event, a silent auction, big dinner, glamorous red carpet, all that kind of thing, you get the actual programs they have in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And you get actual gifts from the Motion Picture Association that we auction off and will give to people and things like that. So you also get publicity promotion through them. Second thing we do is in April, we have a spring showcase, about 30 films from about 15 countries. Then our big film festival is our fall showcase, mid-October. And we have about, I was saying before the show, we try to limit it to about 180 films, but we always go over. Last year we had about 245 from about 50 countries. We realized early on it's competitive in the film festival world, and if we wanted to have our own niche, Asian film and Film Pacific were the perfect focus for us. Also, nobody was showing Asia-Pacific films, and I can say proudly was not the founder, Jeanette Paulson and many wonderful people in Honolulu were, but we were the world's first trans-Asian festival, or Pan-Asian, Pan-Asian, that covered all of Asia. Tokyo is 55 years old, but they only used to show Japanese movies. So we were the very first film. Maybe it only could have been done by a non-Asian film festival, non-Asia-based film festival. It had to start here. So we were actually the world's first Pan-Asian film festival 30 years ago.
So it's really the festival itself and the nature of your work is very much a breeding ground for cultural understanding, intercultural, exchanges, things like that?
Yes. One of the reasons I live in Hawaii is the respect for other cultures. There's no other melting pot in the world I've ever been in. So
melting pot of melting pots.
Melting pot of melting pots. And I'm naive enough to think that maybe someday the whole world will be like Hawaii, where it doesn't matter what race you are, and you celebrate other races. I mean, who would want everybody to be alike? My God, you want different experience and different culture. That's what makes the world interesting. Who wants to be homogenous?
It seems like the fact that people can travel. You can travel halfway around the world, at least probably in a day.
Absolutely.
And with that, it's just going to be more and more of a melting pot.
Yes. I used to say years ago, our theme when the economy first went south, it's like, don't bother traveling, just staycation at HIFF. Yeah. You can visit India, again, for a 3-hour Bollywood movie for $10. It's the best deal in town.
Okay, well, that being said, I sort of took a glance at this, and there were hundreds of films in there. And the big question is, what's an independent film?
10 years ago, that was an easy answer.
Yes, I would think so.
Sex, Lies, and Videotapes was a classic independent film. And that was one of the films that launched Sundance. Sundance and Cannes are unique film festivals in the world because they're market festivals.
So Cannes is in France.
Yes, Cannes in France is probably the #1 film festival in the world. They're slipping a little tiny bit for many reasons, some being new technologies. They're not as necessary as they used to be to the whole film business. Still, they're #1 in the world.
Sure.
One of the reasons is everybody who matters in the filmmaking world goes there. So if you don't go, you're sort of not that important. But everybody's there. You don't have to go to London for a meeting because they're in Cannes. I was just in Los Angeles. Like I said, everybody I spoke to is going to be in Cannes. So I'm going to have follow-up meetings with them at Cannes. So it's very, very convenient that way. But Sundance, so Cannes is a big Hollywood and commercial film-oriented festival. Sundance started off as an independent film festival because independent films had no way of breaking into theaters.
Sundance takes place where?
In Park City, Utah. Robert Redford started that festival. And Hollywood basically made it into what it is today because they needed an independent film market. And the two films that really launched Sundance in terms of how it is now were Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which then picked up a commercial distributor that put it into the movie theaters, puts it on TV, eventually goes to DVD. We can get into that more. New technology changed a lot of that old paradigm. And the second film was Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino. It was an independent film in that it was privately financed. It wasn't financed by one of the big studios or the big Hollywood types. But then, because they need a distribution mechanism, Hollywood then picks it up and distributes it. So how is it still an independent film, quote unquote? So the whole thing's become blurred.
Interesting.
But to me, an independent film is one that essentially starts out with private financing and goes on to, these days, a little bit less, to Hollywood distribution.
Okay.
Because the new technology changed some of the distribution.
So is it fair to say an independent film is more often than not of a lower budget
Yes.
than many Hollywood films.
Always.
And for example, I think it was well touted. Some of I believe Terminator 2.
Yes.
I believe James Cameron, enormous budget,
Unbelievable budget,
just blowing up one whole building
Yes.
just for the shoot.
Yeah.
And
20 takes of that shot.
Right. And so the budget is a lot less.
Yes.
We're not going to find a lot of maybe CGI,
Exactly.
computer graphics.
Yes. Changing a bit now because of
Right.
new technology.
Sure.
Because now those computer graphics are open to just about anybody who knows. You can edit a film now on an Apple computer.
Now, when we say an independent film, the movies that are showcased at the HIFF, Hawaii International
Yes.
Film Festival, these are not movies that at that time have perhaps the trailer on the TV, right? Hollywood trailer.
Sometimes.
Oh.
For example, we showed the girl who kicked the hornet's nest, part 3 of that incredible trilogy, and the third film from the Swedish man with a classic story. He wrote these incredible books. If you haven't seen the films, they're astonishing, especially the very first one, the girl with the dragon tattoo. And of course he dies, and then they go on to be the most successful things probably after Harry Potter in history, and the films are huge and incredible. So we will show films like that also. Interestingly, because that's being remade by Hollywood. Daniel Craig is going to star, and a new actress, I can't think what her name is going to play. The original was brilliant, but Hollywood remakes films. One reason is they've been successful international already, and I believe they think if they put a little Hollywood stamp on the Hollywood stars and remake it, it'll be even better. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, But so we will show commercial films.
Okay.
We picked up a film called Blue Valentine for the fall. We ended up not being able to show it. Long story. A lot of it has to do with the distributors who own the film rights and when they want to open in certain markets and such. One of my challenges when I became executive director in the year 2000, I went after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the fabulous film. Sony Pictures Classics in New York goes, nah, you can't have it. Hawaii doesn't have enough people. We don't care about the market. We're not even going to open it there. I go, you're crazy. Chow Yun Fat's a household word here. We know all the stars here in Hawaii, only in Hawaii. Couldn't get it. I called Ang Lee, the director, who'd been to our festival, and he gave it to me. So at first, Sony was angry. They sent a representative from New York here to check us out. 800 seats sold out in 20 minutes. Sony now loves us, I'm proud to say, and they're good people to work with, but we had to prove our merit a bit. So part of my goal has always been to increase our standing in the film world by having the best films possible, the best people here we can possibly have, to show people that want to premiere their films here. We had a Japanese film in 2008 called Departures. And I had to speak to the director and convince him to give it to us because he goes, oh, it's all about Japanese traditions of death and dying. They don't understand them in America. I said, well, Hawaii's not America. It's Asia, really. He gave us the film. It went on to win an Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. The only place in the United States you could have seen it was at HIFF.
Wow.
After it won the Oscar, it's gone on to become one of the top 10 most successful foreign films in history. Right? So the director, Takeda, who's a wonderful man, is now trying to come back to Hawaii to shoot a film, which is great and shows the kind of economic impact and kind of cultural impact we can have with these filmmakers. And, the more filmmaking in Hawaii, the better, because you end up training the local base of people. They get exposure to it. They do networking, et cetera. So we build on that kind of thing at the festival, too. Now, that was a commercial film. Right? Japan is different. Each country has their own systems. Japan's theaters are controlled by the 3 or 4 film studios.
Yeah.
It used to be like the United States, but Congress stopped it because of an antitrust thing. You couldn't get into the theaters unless your film was produced by one of those studios. Same with Japan. So we had a film a couple years ago called Shark Skin Man and Peach Hip Girl, which was an independent Japanese film. The director was so happy here, we now get the world premieres of all of his films, even though they're from Japan. And one quick story, Quentin Tarantino was here several years ago, met Kazuhito Ishii, the director of Shark Skin Man and Peach Hip Girl. Very interesting, bizarre, wonderful film. They hit it off. Tarantino ended up hiring Kazuhito Ishii to do all the animation in Kill Bill.
Interesting.
So that's that's what goes on behind the scenes of film festivals. Cannes is only that kind of thing. Other festivals like Hong Kong don't have any of that because they don't have any guests. They just show film to the public. HIFF is both. Our major core are the local audiences, of course. However, last year we had 350 filmmakers and film industry people and press and media from around the world striking deals here behind the scenes, picking up films like Princess Kailani, the great film that we showed as Barbarian Princess, and they changed the name back, picked up a distributor here, and the distributor will now place that into movie theaters, on DVD, perhaps on cable television. I know they're showing at the Princess Kailani Hotel here in Honolulu, which makes great sense. So those kind of things are happening behind the scenes at the Hawaii International Film Festival.
Since you know we are in Hawaii, is there anything more you can talk about that movie, Princess Kailani? I saw a lot of it on TV. TV news. They talked about that movie as being somewhat revolutionary.
Yes,
I guess.
Well, it was. There's so many extraordinary stories in Hawaii to tell, and often people come from elsewhere to tell them. That can be very controversial, but those people have the money, the backing, the connections. Filmmakers traditionally haven't had here. Now that's changing dramatically and rapidly. And for example, this year for the first time ever, we had 4 feature films made by Hawaii-based filmmakers. It's at most we'd have 1 every couple of years. 4 is extraordinary because of new technology. Anybody can afford to make a film now because it's not film, it's digital. They can edit on their Apple computer.
Yes.
I was telling you before the show, I was reading about a famous Korean director who shot a great film called Old Boy, for example, who we've had at HIFF several times. Brilliant man. Shot his new film on an iPhone. The entire film was shot on an iPhone, which he said completely changed the perspective. You're shooting people, instead of the big camera rig, you've got an iPhone in front of them. So you're going to get different performances and such from people. But the fact you can do that is amazing. Well, because anyone can shoot a film now.
Well, that's right. And with the advent of new technology, digital media, even just the individual producer can produce better quality film than perhaps a movie theater could. The major movie producers, even the Paramount, MGM, 20, 30 years ago. It's a lot better, isn't it?
It is. I mean, you look at some of the old films, especially the special effects, and they're sort of funny.
Right.
they were even Star Wars holds its own.
That was quite, yes.
But you go back even further, before most of the audience is probably born, but I was younger, and the effects are absurd because they were so primitive. But at least they did them, and they're always, like Tron is a good example. The original Tron, completely different than the new one because the special effects are outrageous now that you have.
So,
whole new world.
The independent film, these days, it goes beyond just, I guess, and I may be wrong, correct me, but just perhaps the prevailing public image of that low-budget, quote, cheesy movie. That's not what it is anymore, is it?
You still get some of them. Like there's something called Paranormal Activities I saw on a plane the other day because I hadn't seen it, and it was really raw. Some guy, apparently the house is supposedly haunted and this kind of thing. And that was made for like no money, but was incredibly successful. They made a fortune off of that movie.
I heard something about that, correct.
That looked really raw.
Yeah.
But you can have it because like we're on digital right now. We're being shot on digital equipment, The quality is extraordinary. I mean, even the photos you take on your iPhone are unbelievable.
Is it fair to say that, a lot of the independent films, and for example, let's just compare them to Hollywood films. Hollywood films oftentimes can be solely for entertainment purposes. You sit down in a movie theater, go with your family, enjoy, or go with your guys and watch the action movie, the kung fu movies and things like that. But the independent films, is it fair to say that there's a certain artistic element to it, where it's more about not the entertainment value, but the experience and the understanding and the interaction with the movie itself due to the emotions, the themes, things like that?
I think traditionally that was always definitely true. A lot of independent films were made because Hollywood wouldn't make them. And so they tended to be often more of I always call it cerebral cinema.
Right.
Some brilliant film is made by some independent person because Hollywood thinks nobody's going to be interested in that subject, like autism or, oh gosh, I can't remember the one now, but the brilliant guy, the mathematician, a brilliant mind or something.
Beautiful Mind?
Beautiful Mind.
Yeah.
at first people thought, well, who would be interested in a topic like that? Well, that was an incredible picture that went on to be really great and was finally made. For years, they tried to get that made. And the idea was nobody would care about it.
Interesting.
Now, again, because there's so many films that can be made, I think it's gone beyond that kind of idea. Although thinking the public still might be, it's a bit more of a cerebral thing. Now, when you say it's interesting because there's raw entertainment, quote unquote, with buildings blowing up and transformers and robots and things. But I remember a couple years ago, Roger Ebert, the fabulous film critic, who was back here again this year to celebrate our 30th anniversary, somebody came up to him at HIFF and said, I didn't like that movie. And he goes, why not? They said, it really disturbed me. I'm really depressed now. He said, did it move you emotionally? They said, yes. He goes, then the film's a success. I'm not sure every film moves you emotionally. I mean, Adam Sandler's funny as can be. It moves you emotionally because you have a good laugh, but it's not some of the, serious, heart-rending kind of films and such. It takes you to a different level. Although a horror film moves you emotionally, it frightens you and such, So I think a good film moves you emotionally in some way. Although there's nothing like raw entertainment. I'll get home at night. I don't watch very much television, but sometimes I'll put on as you said, highly entertaining film for pure escapism. You don't have to think; you just sit there and laugh.
I guess what I was curious about is I've seen some of these movies. I did watch the when it used to be Siskel and Ebert.
Yes,
they would review the Hollywood movies, but they would also talk about independent films.
Yes,
and they would analyze them and how you hear on the news sometimes even the independent films are up for certain awards. How this is going to be one of the best of the year.
Yeah,
but it's not your standard Hollywood type theme.
Exactly.
Where it's just for the pure entertainment. It's very involved, a story, sometimes often based upon very famous novels, fiction novels, if I'm not mistaken. I spoke with you off camera how, maybe the Diary of Anne Frank would be something that is just a, sort of a theme or type of story that's involved in an independent movie.
Yes.
Helen Keller, Story of Helen Keller, Death of a Salesman.
Yes.
And so it's not the type of movie necessarily that you can watch without thinking and understand. Would that be fair to say sometimes? You really need to be involved personally, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Although again, with independent films now, you get all kinds of things that are sort of zany. The Blair Witch Project. Remember, supposedly a bunch of teenagers or friends go off into the woods and they're terrified, and you never really see anything, but they cleverly shot it so you think they're being pursued by ghosts or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was again an independent thing. And that had different kind of values than you normally might see in a so-called independent.
Because Chuck, up to now you've talked about a lot of you've mentioned a lot of movies that are Hollywood, but that they were independent films. So, and I would have never guessed. So, like you said, is the line really becoming blurred?
Very blurred. There's something called the Independent Spirit Awards. I just came back from the Golden Globes, which is always great, and great access to the actors and actors. That's one reason I go. Also to let them know about the Hawaii International Film Festival, because we're huge in Asia.
Yeah.
Less well known in Hollywood, because Hollywood has always tried to keep foreign films out. They don't want them in the United States. They've changed now for a number of reasons. Also with Hollywood, I'm getting way off what your original question was here, but with Hollywood now, the majority of Hollywood films do better abroad than they do in the United States. So a program like the Golden Globes, because if you watched it, the host was making fun of the Golden Globe, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, because they're very interesting, unusual people. That's the reason I like them. I like eccentric people, and they're extremely eccentric. They tend to be for whatever reason. They write about Hollywood movies for foreign publications. So the gentleman whose guest I am every year writes one article about an Indian movie, and 70 publications pick it up. That's amazing power that Hollywood film critics don't necessarily have anymore, So it's a different kind of thing. But the Independent Spirit Awards that were designed for independent films are having difficulty defining what an independent film is. Because again, to me, an independent film is one that starts out independently. It usually means independent financing. They couldn't get it the other way, or they want to really control the story and not have a studio involved that has final control over the editor, such they want to really control it. So they started out. But because Hollywood has traditionally had the established distribution mechanisms into the theaters onto DVD, onto cable, they then ended up working with the Hollywood films. Also, Hollywood goes after them at Sundance, for example, and they'll try to pick up the independent films as one of their own. Miramax under Harvey Weinstein really helped start that kind of thing also. And there's a great book about how Harvey Weinstein and Pulp Fiction and Quentin Tarantino really helped make Sundance what it is today, the big film market that it is, where Hollywood goes to pick up. Hollywood and foreign distributors, because the world is really broken up into distribution areas. There's the United States, and there's Europe, there's also like Germany, England, individual. So it's all these distribution mechanisms throughout the world. Now again, not to jump into technology, but who needs that anymore? Because now you can put something online, and it's international immediately. I was telling a story just beforehand. Robert Rodriguez, the famous director in Hollywood who's worked particularly with Quentin Tarantino plus on his own, was watching YouTube. He saw a film by a 17-year-old fellow from Chile, instantly hires a guy, brings him to Hollywood. So in the past, that filmmaker would have had to do a short, maybe a documentary, maybe first feature. He skipped all that. He jumped right over the top of it because of YouTube. You know, so when the economy went bad a couple of years ago, a lot of those film distributors couldn't make it anymore and fell by the wayside. They'll never be replaced because there's no need for them anymore, right?
Right.
And with independent cinema, the traditional distribution used to be that a film would be picked up, it would go to a theater first, then maybe cable TV later, then maybe DVD. But now you can jump through that, and film festivals have become the theatrical release for independent films. They show at HIFF, then they go online. So it's all completely changed.
So it's definitely technology. YouTube, like you mentioned, maybe even Ustream or Justin.tv, all these things. It's the matter of distribution. It's the issue of distribution that's really changed.
Exactly.
Giving these independent producers the opportunity to get their work out.
Absolutely. They never had before. That's one of the most exciting things about technology, is that anybody can make a film and anybody can get it out there in the world, all by themselves.
Okay. Well, Chuck, I'd like to thank you for
Thanks
this episode.
So
It was very interesting. And to the viewers out there, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We heard a lot about independent films, and I think the best thing I can sum it up is the next time the Hawaii International Film Festival is in town, definitely go check it out, because it seems to be there's a lot of good movies out there, a lot of good talent that's ready to just, perhaps one day hit Hollywood. And as we've discussed, there's a lot of movies out there at Hollywood that essentially started off as independent movies. So that being said, thank you for joining us. I'm Tom Tanimoto. Until next time, look forward to seeing you on another episode again. Aloha.